At this point, we're all aware of the dangerous actions that parents are taking towards school boards right now. We've had some conservative groups capture school boards by force. I remember there's one in San Diego in which that was the case. They kind of went in there and they pushed out the elected board members and said, we are now the school board. We're going to get rid of the mask mandates and all that. But look, there's a lot more to it than that. I think we all realize that at this point. And that is that these rabid conservative people are hijacking school boards, taking them over, and they want to make certain that children who go through that school system only learn what they want them to learn. So effectively what they're trying to do is push a certain type of indoctrination on the entire population. So this is what happened in the Weimar Republic as it became Nazi Germany. Okay. They were teaching children about the Aryan race and how superior they were and everybody else was subhuman, or the Jews especially, and so on and so forth. There was just a lot of things going on at that time in Germany that taught kids that they were superior, that their race and their country was superior. I mean, if you can't connect the dots as to what happened then compared to what's happening now, you're not really paying attention. History's repeating itself. These groups are trying to force feed children a way of thinking that ensures that the cycle of hatred, the belief in white supremacy, and capitalism continues far beyond its natural lifespan. Because they're benefiting from it in some way, or at least it makes them feel better about themselves. And as I explained in my previous video, Madison Cawthorn clowning himself on abortion, the whole white supremacy thing really is just a projection of penis envy. That's really all it is. Because, and you know, you need look no further than the KKK, right? I mean, they were just like, oh, they don't like black guys going after their white women. That was kind of the original thought process behind that, right? So it's just insecurity. But as far as these school boards are concerned, these parents, it's not critical race theory so much. They don't even understand it. They came out and admit they don't understand it. And it's not about, you know, about mask mandates or vaccine mandates. It's about the fact that they want to force feed a certain narrative in the population to get rid of another thought process that they view as detrimental and evil and wrong and destructive to America, because they have a vision of America that they think is right and everything else is wrong. Well, it also shows they don't believe in democracy, because if they did believe in democracy, they would allow other opinions to be expressed and they would actually include them, not try to keep them out of the repertoire. But that's not what they're doing here. They're trying to isolate a certain thought process and a certain mindset, a certain type of like overall view of America, and make certain that that's what every child that goes into the school system comes out thinking. Well, again, they did that in Germany. That's how the Nazis tried to raise the children during their reign. And it didn't turn out very well. Didn't turn out well at all. Nor should it have. But unfortunately, it did follow all over the world after World War II. And, you know, it's manifesting in this country and in other countries around the world now as well. You see white supremacist groups popping up all over the place. You have these far-right leaders. You have Erdogan in Turkey, you have Orban in Hungary, Putin in Russia, of course. There's some right-wing leaders that are in the Netherlands and Ireland right now. Of course, Boris Johnson in the UK, and so on and so forth. These people are very strong nationalists. Okay, they don't want to include anything that's different from a conservative, ultra-nationalistic view of where they are. This is what happens when capitalism fails, and people don't, you know, they don't want to start including more opinions, more solutions, more answers to the problem. These people have already been profiting off the status quo for so long, they want to keep that gravy train going. And so they try to force feed people the thought process that, oh, well, this is perfect, you know, everything's great, let's keep this thing going. And it just leads to the downfall of nations that much quicker. Because the more you try to resuscitate capitalism when it fails, the more you keep trying to reanimate a corpse, the more frustrating it gets, because the more failures you're going to get. And eventually, you do end up learning that, well, maybe we shouldn't have been doing this whole time. Maybe we should have tried a new system. Okay. Well, everybody has an idea about what their new system should be because a lot of people, it's roughly 50-50 in the United States at this point who favor socialism to capitalism. It's still ever so slightly, like by 1 percentage point, 2 percentage points in favor of capitalism, but that's diminishing. But at the same time, you get people who are like, okay, we're sick and tired of the Democrats. We want the Republicans in charge. Dude. You get the Republicans back in charge, it's going to get way worse. It's going to be, capitalism on steroids and human growth hormones yet again. It's just going to make the problem worse. And then if you say, okay, well, we didn't want that, we'll let the Democrats try again, and then they do nothing, and then you say, okay, well, screw that, we're going to do the Republicans, and then everything just keeps shifting farther and farther and farther to the right, to the point where it's an all-out fascist dictatorship. And then what? Really got to start looking at alternatives seriously. But again, I did a video recently that showed these specialty parties have to get their messaging better. They've got to start adopting a form of messaging and presenting their platform in a way that's more relatable to the general public. And they also got to get more funding, but you have to start your messaging right and getting through to people to start getting that funding. So it's a bit of a tricky situation. But this education problem we have with our school boards and these parents taking it over, these right-wing zealots trying to get in there and indoctrinate children into this American supremacist mindset and trying to say, okay, you don't need to wear masks, you don't need to get vaccine, spread COVID all you want. It's I honestly, excuse me, I don't know how much more irresponsible these parents could be. Okay, the vaccines work, they're proven to work. COVID's a real virus. Most people know it. You only got a few people out there who are just like, ain't real, it's a liberal hoax, it's Chinese hoax, rah, rah, rah. And they're the ones getting hospitalized. And this is a problem because now the hospitals are being overridden by people who have not been vaccinated. Okay? And if you want to force children in that situation by trying to forcefully take over school boards and just keep spreading the virus to kids like you're treating like chicken pox, right? There was a time when parents would have like pox parties for their children to make sure they got it so that later on in life they wouldn't catch it. It's just better to catch it as a child, right? I don't know if they're thinking this way about COVID, but this is a respiratory illness that could literally kill a child. So this is really irresponsible. It's callous and indifferent to human life. And if you really love your children, you would not put them in that situation. You're really, we want to save the babies. We're pro-life. Well, then stop with the theatrics about vaccines and COVID and start doing the right thing. Otherwise, you're not pro-life. You're just looking to force feed people your ideology, and that's it. And it's all based on misinformation and lies. You haven't been able to prove otherwise. So the school board thing is dangerous. I mean, this is really what we need to be focused on. And it's no wonder that the school boards are now being looked at by the FBI as sort of like a number one priority almost. Like, yeah, look out for these groups that are targeting school boards. And if they start trying to take over school boards, you see anything on social media saying that they're going to threaten school boards, keep an eye on them. Keep an eye on them because they're going to try something drastic and foolish, and they're going to put a lot of people in danger. So we really got to be careful. And we really got to start taking these local elections, especially school board elections, seriously and making certain that we do everything we can to stop these people from getting control over our education system and force feeding our kids an ideology that's just going to lead us further down the path of destruction. And the fact is, we really don't have an education system in that sense anyway. I mean, we really just have a system of indoctrination that goes all the way back to the Industrial Revolution, because back then schools were originally structured to produce the next generation of workers. Okay, but now of course we've got technology, and we have a lot of people in this country compared to back then, to the point where we really only need about half the time per person to do any work, and technology can pick up the slack. And if you still want to increase productivity, well, it's simple. You basically employ twice as many people, but only half the time each. Like, let's say there's a poll, for instance, I put out on Twitter and on Facebook. It wasn't like an official poll bolstered by any kind of funding, but it basically said, which would you rather have? The choice was A, 40 hours a week at $15 an hour, B, 60 to 80 or even 100 hours a week at $7.25 an hour, which is kind of the situation we're forced into nowadays. C, 20 to 25 hours a week at $45 an hour. Or D, something else, please specify. So please leave in the comments anything you have on that subject. I personally would choose C. Why? Number one, it gives you more money than any of the other options on a bi-weekly basis or weekly basis, whatever. Excuse me. But basically, it also gives you more free time to do what you want to do with your life. And because it gives you a little more money as well, which goes along with increased productivity due to technology, okay, you still have the money, even though you're not working as much, you still have the money to inject back into the economy to make things expand. That's the whole point, right? But you're also free to expand the economy in other ways outside of where you're already contributing. You can do it as an artist. You could do it as a musician. You could do it as a video creator like myself. You could do it any way you want, really. Any other way you want. And you'll be much happier for it because you can do something in your time that's more fulfilling and you're not trapped in an 8 to 10 hour, 15 hour workday in a job you hate, lining the pockets of somebody who doesn't care about you. You know, I think that's just overall the better arrangement. But in order to do that, you know, we've got to restructure our education system in a way that that reflects that reality. That, like, okay, we need to have children interact with each other in the classroom more democratically. We've got to show them that it's possible to have a democratic economy, a democratic home, a democratic whatever it is. And we got to make sure that these people who are trying to force feed American exceptionalism on students and just kind of have this white supremacist view or nationalistic view of the world, that doesn't get into our school system any more than it already has, because it's just going to lead us farther down the path of destruction, and our future and our children are far too precious to let that happen.